This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
Focus is one of those characteristics I look for when I'm hiring someone on my team. So why is this important? Bruce Lee probably defines it best when he says, the successful warrior is the average man with laser-like focus. So are you laser-focused on your idea? I'm Phil McKinney, and you're listening to Killer Innovations. This is where we bring leading innovators to the show so that you can learn from them and take your idea and create a product or service that is game-changing. So today our guest is Peter Leone and Mark Vericione. They're the co-founders of a company called STEMLEAD. We'll get to that in a minute. But I wanted to give Peter and Mark an opportunity for you guys to introduce yourselves. So give us kind of that 60-second radio commercial. How do you introduce yourselves when you meet somebody at a dinner party that you've never met before?
Well, thank you, Phil. As a young man, I started my career off in the United States Navy. I've had now 20-plus years of professional services experience supporting the federal government, providing scientific, engineering, technical, and advisory services. Most recently, my focus has been on launching STEMLEAD with a good group of other people, a new global online community, helping out to identify the world's most promising emerging STEM talent.
Hey, Phil, it's Mark Vericione. I've been in the industry for 20-plus years, working anywhere from consulting and as an executive, just engaged in strategy and business and IT transformation, and most of my career driving innovation in startups across industries, and working with Pete in the past. Pete and I have known each other for about 20 years and worked together in a startup as well as throughout different interactions in the marketplace. But we're really focused on, the building blocks of innovation, which is STEM.
So why do you think that STEM is so important for this transformation to the innovation economy? What is it that's got you guys so excited about it? Well,
one of the things, and I'm going to let Pete elaborate on this, is we really need to change the focus. And as you had mentioned, and we had talked about earlier, Pete and I, there's all types of communities for entertainers, for athletes, and so we really need to change the focus for those who are in a STEM career. And I'm going to let Pete elaborate on that.
Well, as Mark was saying, there's a lot of communities, particularly for young student athletes, and these communities exist so these athletes can exhibit their excellence and share their knowledge, improve their performance, get recognized, establish a following, and be recruited and succeed. But there's nothing analogous for those kids who have a passion, brains in science, technology, engineering, math. So I think that a community with that type of focus is important. And I think also we know the NBA knew where LeBron James was early, well before he joined the NBA. And industry and academia and others need to have that over-the-horizon early targeting of the world's most promising STEM talent, no matter where it is. And I think that's what's most important.
And give the audience here a little bit of background on what STEMLEAD is. So how do you, if someone who has no background, no experience in STEMLEAD, how do you describe it to somebody that you meet on the street?
All right. STEMLEAD's a global online community deliberately designed for those individuals who have a passion and brains in STEM and want to get known and connect with people like themselves. On STEMLEAD, they can build an online profile, connect with people like themselves across 195 countries, 275 STEM areas, interface translates in 64 languages. They could set up communities and collaborate. That's the kind of community that it is.
You know something, Phil? One of the big things that we talked about a little bit earlier and how STEM is really the building block for enabling innovation. Innovation is where we were trying to drive here with STEMLEAD. In STEMLEAD, you're allowed to collaborate, communicate. There's a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring going on inside of STEMLEAD. One kid is working on a project, and another kid sees that globally or even in the U.S. and is encouraged, wants to be part of that or understand how that one student is going about creating what they're creating. So there's a lot of peer-to-peer mentoring in there. There's a collective genius We talk a lot about crowdfunding. Well, this is crowd genius. So, as they're in there, kids are working together to communicate, collaborate, work on projects, and it's an unimpeded global innovation opportunity. And, you're using diversity of geographies, projects, experiences, cultures, types of kids, backgrounds, and so forth. So I think enabling innovation is really a key passion here with STEMlate.
So what's the average age for a student that's currently on the STEMlate site? So let me back up maybe here for just a second, because I'm envisioning STEMlate as kind of being the LinkedIn version for STEM students. If I've got that right, what's the average age of the students that are on STEMlate today?
Right now, the average age is as a high school student and in college. The earliest someone could be on STEMlate is the age of 13, and if you're under 18, you have to have parental or legal guardian permission to be a member.
And so how many students are on STEMlate right now?
Right now, several thousand, and from about probably 45 plus countries.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's really a global interaction. And, the other thing, too, is when you have an early stage in elementary school and junior high, kids are getting involved in STEM, and they're driven towards STEMlate. STEMlate's, the professionals of tomorrow. That's a community for those professionals of tomorrow. But the kids are getting involved early on, even in STEMlate, through other things, like Jason Learning, where we have a partnership, and some of the other partnerships we have with those discovery and enablers and interactive type of play and playgrounds out there.
Yeah, so I guess the question for me on this is how do you find the students that are interested in STEM, that are just kind of naturally there, right? It's not the broad population of students, but how do you find the students? How do they find you? What's that connection between what you're doing and finding the students who are a good fit?
That's where we are right now. So when we talk about STEMlate, we call it making the machine. Right now, what the whole focus on is engaging high schools. I just had a high school STEM coordinator from Harrisonburg, Virginia, reach out to me, who wants to have his students use STEMlate to build online portfolios and use the collaboration tools starting this year. So we're focused our community right now on getting the message out about it. What we believe is that.
So that's great. Let's pause it right there, because I want to pick this up as we go into as we come back out of the segment. Stay right where you're at. If you've got kids, grandkids, or know someone with kids, then you want to hear what Peter and Mark are doing as we go into as we extend this conversation around STEMlate. As I've said in the past, the ability to engage these kids and get them interested in STEM is going to be critical for this innovation and creative economy. I'll be posting everything we talked about in the show notes at killerinnovations.com, so check it out. Stay right there. I'm Phil McKinney, and you're listening to Killer Innovations on the BizTalk Radio Network.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovator's Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
As I get older, I look back and reflect on what I did and didn't do in my past. Now, this tends to be triggered whenever I hear the Mark Twain quote, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things that you didn't do than the ones that you did do. Now, I do look back, and sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had done X. So our guests today are really trying to help students today who are interested in STEM to get engaged early through middle school and high school and not regret the times and things that are wasted back in the school days, and get them prepared for this transition to the information, or from the information to the innovation economy. So let's pick up where we left off in the last segment, Peter and Mark. And one of the things I want the listeners to walk away with is really what can they do when it comes to thinking about STEM, and particularly around kids or kids they may interact with. So Mark, why don't you take the first one? What are those three things that the listeners can walk away with when we think about STEM?
Well, Phil, I know your audience, you probably have some parents that are on board here, as well as some educators and just influencers all around. And they really need to be enablers. And when I say enablers, they themselves need to become STEM literate, have a good understanding of STEM, what it is, and where it is today in society. We do have a STEM society. And then they also have to help through the discovery stage. When I say discovery stage, I've got a lot of kids, and my kids are always asking me questions about marine biology or whatever it may be. And sometimes I kind of slowly blow them off just because I'm real busy, instead of spending some time with them and discovering, getting on Google, researching a little bit, spending a little time with them and educating them along the lines of some of the questions they have and some of that discovery stage. And then the other thing is, we really need to promote some of that experiential kind of the playgrounds. And I'm going to let Pete jump on that one.
Well, there was a really great book that I read recently called Creating Innovators by Tony Wagner. And he talked about the 3 Ps. He talked about, play first. We have to get engaged children early, getting them to play and be exposed to things that are science-related. The second was getting them to build a passion. And the third thing, eventually to evolve a purpose to it. And I think a great enabler of that is there's so many children's science museums in this country, but there aren't enough. And you think of there's over 3,000 counties in the country, you would think of at least one major mall in every county would have a children's science lab where kids could go in there and they could play. I know some individuals here in Northern Virginia that are doing that, but that's one of the great ways we could start to, in addition to what they learn in the classroom, really help kids get exposed to science early.
And so, as sort of a second takeaway, as we're talking about this experiential discovery centers and playgrounds, employers, and I know we have employers out there in the audience, but the employers kind of need to create this connection between academic and application. And how do you do that? Well, it's these internships, but I would say you call them a little more of an internship in the early stages when they're in high school or even junior high, and helping to understand what does a company do, the engineering aspect of things, getting them excited about it, creating passion around what a company in particular is doing, and then creating challenges for them. And at the same time, these employers are getting to discover who are those top 5 kids in there who really have a passion for STEM and are really going to move forward and are going to be the next enabler of innovation or a next innovator in that company. And so I think what has to happen is employers need to get engaged early on from a mentoring aspect, creating challenges, and just creating that connection between academic and application, real-world application, almost like the discovery and the experiential playgrounds. And then,
I think it's an interesting point because back, years ago when not that long ago, but when I was in Silicon Valley, I served on the board at the Tech Museum in San Jose, and it's the Tech Museum of Innovation. And one of the things that we experimented at the Tech was to create what was called the Tech Challenge. It was corporate sponsored, and it was a problem statement that was given out to students. And it worked all the way from grade school all the way through high school, and it was scaled accordingly. So grade school kids delivered a certain element of it, and high school students did a much more bigger, more complex. And a couple of years ago, I was judging one of them, and it was on removing the plastic waste in the ocean. And so the little kids thought up, drawings and kind of highlighting the problem, whereas the high school kids actually created Lego robots to actually go off, and they had to skim a certain amount of material off of this big, huge pool as part of proving it. But just to watch those kids, the eyes, the passion, that energy was actually inspiring for me, right? Kind of us old, crusty old guys that have been in the innovation game for so long, we've become a little calloused over time. But watching these kids, it was just amazing. It was just mind-blowing.
Well, what's interesting, too, is, with STEMly, it's an online community that allows for some of that discovery and for corporations and those in academia to interact with some of the kids and see what they're doing for projects. And not only encourage them, but help them out along the way. It's interesting seeing some of these kids around the world who will take garbage and turn that little garbage into neat little innovations or renovations of things. And I think what happens is they get lost in the shuffle, and, there's an opportunity for companies to get in there, engage with these kids on some of the projects, help them to create more of an interest and a passion for it. So I think early on, this is the best time for companies to find the talent, as well as for academia to find the next student at their school and the next innovator. And, Pete was going to talk a little bit about some of those online communities that we think students need to leverage a little more as well. And I know we have some students online, and there's a lot of opportunities for them to leverage what's out there today.
Well, there are a lot of online communities out there where students can not only learn what they're seeing in the classroom at their respective schools, but get access to rich multimedia curriculum and things of that nature. But more importantly, I think, you always think about a child having a mentor as an adult. But what's more important is this is a peer-to-peer mentoring. And so if you have a kid, I'll use an example in Northern Virginia, who has a passion for building a little micro air vehicle, and he could put a video of that little micro air vehicle on an online community that's very STEM focused, and another kid overseas sees the same thing, and the two of them connect, and they decide to set up a secure group and build an algorithm that allows 150 little micro air vehicles to do an aerial choreography to lights and music. Then people might say, well, how did those kids come up with that algorithm? And that's what's so brain-filled based upon the point that you made, because these young minds are not polluted, they're unimpeded. So, online communities where STEM focus is where any good kid could bring where somebody might say, that's a bad idea. Well, let's see if that's a bad idea, because likely it's not.
So here's the question for you. How do you guys have been working on launching STEMLead. You've gotten some early traction with a couple, in the 1,000 categories of kind of students that are out there using it today. What's the biggest roadblock for STEMLead to be successful? If you had to pick one big roadblock, what is it?
I think what happens is many of these companies out there and even academia promote STEM but aren't really engaged, and there's a disconnect between promoting and really engaging. And I think what we need to do is have more of the people working in these companies to engage with students and engage in those communities and leverage some of that talent as well. And I think what happens is, everyone wants to hire the next talent, but not everyone wants to go out there and really discover the next talent. And I think what has to happen is you're going to have academia, you're going to have corporations out there, industry out there, start putting a little more effort into discovering STEM talent early on and engaging them early on. And I think that's the biggest roadblock we have. Everyone talks about STEM, but not everyone is truly engaged.
I think Mark's very right, because, for anything to be successful, it requires a partnership. And there are many good, decent educators out there, but many don't have that practical, real-world experience. And I think...
Yeah, and Peter, that's an interesting point, because some of them don't have that experience. And I think one of the things that we could all do is engage with STEMLead. So, Peter, Mark, I want to thank you for joining us. If people want to follow what you're doing with STEMLead, how do they find you?
They could go and they could look at www.stemlete.org. That's STEMLETE.org.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Peter, Mark, appreciate you joining in. If you want to stay connected, text the word innovate to 33444 or drop an email to innovate@killinnovations.com. I'm Phil McKinney. This is Kill Innovations, but we'll be right back with this week's killer question.